Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today is the kickoff for Kaldheim Week, where I'm going to feature a mechanic or card from the new set every day. Let's get started from one that I think will be pretty common in Paper Magic with the new set. Amy draws for turn, and then plays a land. Then Nick stops her and points out that she did not put a second counter on her Battle of Frost and Fire. Given that your investigation determines that this was an honest mistake, what is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? I'm going to address this situation happening at both competitive and regular rel, since I think it's a good one to know for both cases. So, competitive rel first. At first glance, this seems like it should be an open and shut case of missed trigger, but that would be wrong. You see, unlike every other similar effect in Magic's history, putting the lore counter on Sagas is not a triggered ability, but rather it happens as a turn-based action. This has some really important consequences in terms of how forgetting to do it is handled. First, the root cause of this infraction is not missing a trigger, but a turn-based action. So the appropriate infraction is not missed trigger, but game rule violation. The infraction's penalty is still a warning, but the fix is a little bit different from what you might expect. If you miss a trigger, your opponent gets to decide whether it's put on the stack or just missed entirely. For GRV, the judge decides whether to leave the game state as is or back up to the point where the infraction happened. There is a third option, partial fixes, but none of them are applicable here. This decision is based on the judge's judgment of which option is least disruptive to the game state. As stated in the original question, a simple backup is probably the best solution, since the mistake was caught right away. For more complicated situations, such as if the players had progressed through a combat phase, it gets a lot less cut and dried because the multiple opportunities for players to change their decisions based on information they got from actions their opponents took or didn't take. I probably wouldn't back up through a combat phase for something like this unless it was a really simple board state, like if both players were tapped out and had only obvious attacks and blocks available, or maybe if both players indicated during their interviews that they would prefer that solution. The last important caveat is that a player is allowed to just let their opponents miss a triggered ability. However, this is not the case for missing a turn-based action. This means Nick must call a judge if he notices Amy forget to put a counter on a Saga. If the judge determines that Nick was aware of his responsibility to point this mistake out, but didn't in order to profit from Amy's misplay, that constitutes cheating on Nick's part. Even if Nick doesn't notice, he still bears some responsibility for noticing and pointing out this error, so he will be assessed a failure to maintain game state if the judge believes sufficient time has passed that Nick should have been able to notice. In this case, Amy's land play is the first time Amy took an action that was wrong, since the counter is supposed to go on at the beginning of the main phase. This means Nick is in the clear, and there's no infraction for him. In regular rel, things are a lot simpler. The judge just decides whether a backup to put the counter on and perform the appropriate chapter ability is a good solution, or if the game state should be left as is. The judge may even decide that the least intrusive option is to just perform the counter add an appropriate chapter ability then and there, which would not be a policy-supported fix at competitive rel. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again tomorrow for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.